Thanks for downloading Friday Night Comedy from BBC Radio 4. If you want to find out more, visit the Radio 4 website. But not before you listen to this week's Now Show. It's called Topical for a reason, you know.
Coming up on this week's Now Show, Nicola Sturgeon's unexpected bombshell.
Daddy.
As Article 50 approaches, a second referendum now looms.
Daddy, what are you doing?
Shh, Daddy's busy doing a programme on the BBC.
Is Mr. Tumble in it?
No, Mr Tumble's not in it. Is he?
No, he dropped out at the last minute.
Yeah, you see, it's all about the news and current events.
Can I do dancing in it?
No, it's on the radio. The dancing bits don't really work. We've tried.
It's mostly about grown-up things. And also President Trump.
Is he the orange man with scary hair?
No, you mustn't be rude about him.
At least I know how to spell phone tap.
Children, kids, come away, they're recording. Sorry.
She's not the nan, you know.
Quick, cut to the theme music. Hello, I'm Steve Punt.
And I'm Hugh Dennis.
With us are Jack Carroll, Jake Yapp and Jess Robinson. And this is...
The Now Show!
Thank you very much indeed. Hello, and Scotland threatened IndyRef 2 this week. It does seem strange there could be an independence vote so soon after the last one. I mean, it's a referendum, not a UKIP leadership election.
Critics said it was too quick since the last referendum, described by Alex Salmond as a...
once in a generation, perhaps once in a lifetime opportunity.
Was only 3 years ago. I know life expectancy in Scotland is slightly shorter, but not by that much. Even Begbie, Spud, Sick Boy and Renton all made it to their late 40s and they're all drug addicts.
So, when Alex Salmond said once in a lifetime, he either meant the lifetime of his pet gerbil or the statement did not count in the case of material change of circumstances, such as the UK voting to leave the EU. However, it's not really that simple, because although Scotland voted to remain in the UK referendum, quite a lot of those voters voted leave in the EU referendum. It's quite complex, but here's Lorraine Kelly to explain.
Well, polls show there are remain and noes and remain but yeses and leave and yeses and leave but noes. Nicola Sturgeon's hoping that remain but noes might become remain and yeses, but Scotland voted no and remain because London told them no and sod off. There are lots of yes but remains who are now going to become yes but leavers by default and might think enough yes but leavers will look at Theresa May and think no but really, and then vote yes and remain. In short, it's all a bit of a pickle, so let's have a wee look at the weather.
The hilarious thing about IndyRef 2, though, is hearing Theresa May telling Scotland that cutting yourself off from your largest trading partner is a really bad idea. Or warning Scotland that...
politics is not a game.
Yes, that would have been more convincing if she and her government hadn't spent the last 8 months endlessly telling us that we're facing...
high-stakes poker.
in which we...
can't show our hand.
And how many...
cards we hold.
Or how EU citizens are...
valuable chips on the board.
And generally using game metaphors all the time, like the cliché-addled folk that they are. I'll say one thing for Boris Johnson. He may deploy his polysyllabic verbosity to obfuscate the paucity of his erudition, but at least his ostentatious displays of prolix persiflage tend to avoid cliché, unlike pretty much anyone else in politics. This week, for example, Boris chose to sum up the economic advantages for Scotland of post-Brexit trade as...
liberating the haggis.
Now, to me, that sounds like a particularly unsavoury euphemism.
Do you want another point, mate?
In a minute, yeah. First I've got to go and, liberate the haggis.
Whenever I hear Boris, I always think of George Orwell, who had it right when he said, you should never trust anyone who uses longer words than they need to. And you know this, don't you? If a bloke comes around to mend your boiler and goes...
yeah, it's knackered, I can mend it, it'll cost you £1,000.
You can trust them, ladies and gentlemen. If, on the other hand, they go...
now, this somewhat antiquated contraption would appear to me to have sustained a level of wear and tear which may have adversely affected its efficiency. I will ascertain the precise nature of the work required and convey to you the resultant calculations regarding a pecuniary reimbursement.
Tell them to leave immediately.
Actually, mate, do you mind if I pop upstairs? I need to liberate a haggis. There are interesting things about a second IndyRef, though. Theresa May will put it off for as long as possible and may try and sabotage the result. either by having the returning officer's small children run in just as it's being announced, or, as a last resort, having the result delivered by PricewaterhouseCoopers. India F2, though, will also stretch the resources of the Russian Secret Service, who are allegedly currently interfering in about 3 elections at once, with a general aim of sowing confusion and advancing their own interests. We simply don't know how many crucial votes they might be meddling with or where it might stop.
The judges have their scores. Bruno Tonioli.
A 7.
Darcy Bustle.
Yeah, that was a wonderful rumba. It was passionate and spirited.
Miss Bustle,
Yeah,
do not touch your earpiece.
sorry.
You will give Brendan Cole 3 points.
But it was
Give him 3 points.
3.
Right, Darcy. Next is Gleb Savchenko. You will praise his footwork, and you will give him 10.
What happens if I don't?
We will annex Craig Revel Horwood.
Now, the reason the Russians are supposedly targeting Western elections with fake news and leaked emailed, etc., is that elections matter. Referendums change things. It's not just Scotland. Sinn Féin are pushing for a referendum to unite Ireland, while Marine Le Pen wants one on EU membership in France. And the Dutch election was affected by a rally for President Erdogan, held in Holland for a referendum being held in Turkey, which the Dutch objected to, leading Erdogan to call them
Nazi remnants.
Yeah, showing a slightly flaky grasp of history if he thinks banning right-wing rallies is the Nazi thing.
Referendums, though, of course, are in at the moment, and the wording of the question is always crucial. You'll remember the wording last June.
Should the United Kingdom remain in the European Union, or should it leave the European Union?
You remember.
Along with the single market and the customs union and the European free trade area and the European bodies which certify drug medical safety, shipping, air traffic control and food standards.
That was it, yeah.
And replace all these within 2 years with some vague waffle from Boris Johnson about haggis.
Everywhere you look, people want to live in smaller and more separate worlds instead of the globalised one that they've suddenly decided they don't like, even though they've been voting for it since the 1980s. The basic problem is that without a common enemy, we do have a tendency to split into smaller and smaller groups and spend all our time just fighting each other. But enough of the Labour Party. What about the rest of us? Well, it tends to go like this.
I'm Man City, I hate Man United.
I'm Man United, I hate Man City.
But then someone says,
Hello, I'm from Liverpool.
and suddenly it's...
We're both Manx and we hate Scousers.
Now that lasts until you get...
Hello, I'm from London.
Then suddenly the Manx and the Scousers go...
We're all Northerners and we hate London.
But then what happens?
Hi, I'm Scottish.
And then it's...
We're all English and we hate the Scots.
Until, of course, you get...
Guten Tag, I am from Germany.
And suddenly...
We're all British and we hate Germans.
Which lasts until...
Hi, I voted for Donald Trump.
And lo and behold...
We're all Europeans and we hate you.
And then ISIS turn up and we're all Western civilization together, and so it goes on and on. The fact is, what unites people is a common enemy. What the world really needs, the solution to all humanity's problems, is an alien invasion. Or at least until WikiLeaks tell us it's actually the CIA in green suits. So now it's time to welcome a man much younger than some of the jokes you've heard tonight. For the first time on the Now Show, would you please welcome Jack Carroll.
So, I've been watching the situation in America very closely because it's genuinely terrifying for someone with a disability like me. The Republican Party are right in the middle of a full-on attempt to repeal the Affordable Care Act, which will almost certainly take healthcare away from millions of people, including those with pre-existing conditions, cerebral palsy like what I've got, or whatever it is that Donald Trump's been suffering from. So, yes, it's a strange time, and it's been making me think how lucky I am to live in the UK with a disability, because it was a great year for me last year. I turned 18, actually, and now I'm 18, I get people coming up to me going, Jack, you're 18 now, you drinking? You're 18, you drinking? And I have to go, no, mate, this is just how I walk normally. Although, curiously enough, I have learnt after a few pints I can actually dance Swan Lake in its entirety. It was a great year for me personally last year. Also, a great year for death. If you weren't dead in 2016, you were nothing. People complaining that 2016 was the year that took David Bowie, Gene Wilder, Alan Rickman from us. Don't worry, Donald Trump's president now. We'll all be joining them soon enough. Which brings me neatly on to Donald Trump. I read a thing this week from a prominent evangelical Christian who said that God caused Donald Trump to win the election. Now, I just imagined St. Peter having a chat with God on election day. So, Godster, what you up to today, bro? Anything big planned? Well, big day for me, Pete, big day for me. First, I'm rigging the US election. And then at 12, I'm meant to be appearing in a piece of toast. And then, I've got to remind a pensioner to go and build a massive boat. But I think we can be grateful for the situation in America, because America is what I cite to those people who say they don't like football. You know, those people who go, oh, isn't the money and the violence in football terrible? And I say, no, because look at America. They don't have football, you know. They don't have Chelsea versus Millwall, or Millwall versus West Ham, or Millwall versus anyone, really. They don't have that, so instead they've got to go into a McDonald's and shoot everyone. Because that's what football is. It's a safe space to let out all the toxic bits of human evolution. And if you don't have that, you end up electing a tangerine as your president. So to our American cousins, I say this. Put down the baseball of insincerity and pick up the pint glass and the plastic chair of hope and hurl them across a town square at a terrified family. Now, obviously, as an 18-year-old, I spend a lot of my time on Twitter, but I don't spend nearly as much time on there as the President of the United States of America. I mean, personally, I prefer Facebook to Twitter because I would rather get a happy birthday message from someone who didn't mean it than a death threat from someone who definitely did. While we're on the subject, I'd like to put this question out there to the audience here tonight and the listener at home. Are any of you lot friends with a surprise Facebook racist? Might be an old school friend or someone you haven't seen for a while, and then they'll just burst out of nowhere with a racist Facebook post. I saw one of these things recently. It was an image of a Muslim woman in a burqa, and written across it was, if a Muslim woman is allowed to wear a burqa, then how come I'm not allowed to wear a big white hood and burn a cross on an ethnic minority's front lawn? Is political correctness gone mad? It's one rule for the immigrants and another for the Imperial Grand Wizards. And if expressing that makes me a racist in the eyes of the Liberals, then so be it. I thought, mate, that makes you a racist in the eyes of other racists. I was shocked. I didn't even know my grandma had Facebook. Now, I said at the start how lucky I am to be living in the UK given my condition, but actually, last week the Conservatives pushed through a cut to disabled people's allowance, despite the House of Lords defeating the measure twice, so I guess we can't be too complacent this side of the pond either. I was thinking about how this will affect me and disabled people more broadly, and I'll be honest with you, I'm in two minds about it. On the one hand, this is a barbaric piece of legislation that will force some disabled people into poverty, meaning in some cases they will be unable to leave their homes. On the other hand, disabled people unable to leave their homes equals less competition for parking spaces. Swings and roundabouts. Well, you've been lovely. I've been Jack Carroll, so thank you for having me.
The House of Lords has been very much in the news over the past couple of weeks with the debate surrounding the Brexit bill and the BBC documentary in which Baroness de Souza, a former Speaker of the Lords, stated that the public think it is, quote, full of aged males sitting around, perhaps sleeping on the benches.
But is the public and media perception of the Lords right? What actually goes on those red benches? To help us find out, would you please welcome Lord Temporal and former First Sea Lord, Lord West of Spithead.
Hello, Lord West. Thank you so much for coming on. Now, you are in no sense a lazy peer. You have spoken in 68 debates, apparently, which is well above the average in the last year. You got answers to 94 written questions, again above the average. And in the last Labour government, you were Minister for Security and Counter-Terrorism. But are you usual? Do members of the House of Lords pull their weight?
I think overall, I think it's remarkable how hard most of them work. And I think Baroness de Souza gave a very wrong image, and certainly the consensus amongst my colleagues is that she ought to be debagged and radished, basically, for what she said.
That sounds like a kind of House of Lords kind of thing to do.
I was amazed when I went in, the depth of knowledge of so many people there. When you speak in the Lords, you've got to work on the basis of someone there who knows more than you, even though you're an expert in your area. And there is a benefit sometimes in... I know people are. I mean, it's one of the wonderful things. It makes me young. I feel bloody young when I'm there. But there is a benefit in experience. And, most of us, when we get into, these people, I think the average age is 74 or 5 or something, life has knocked off all the edges, and they have nothing to prove, most of them. Most of them have actually achieved something. They've been through all the vicissitudes of life, and they can speak truth to power, and that's quite useful, actually.
So you've got the government benches, you've got opposition benches and the cross benches, which always amuses me, because it sounds the cross bench sounds to me like it's sort of the House of Lords version of the naughty step. Is that where you go if you've been particularly badly behaved?
No, they're a very good bunch, but it is amusing. I mean, one of the crossbenchers is Lord Panic, which is the most lovely name, isn't it? And then we have Judge, who's the Lord Judge, which is... so there are some good ones like that. I mean, you would never start from where we are now. If you sat and wrote a constitution for the UK, you'd never set up anything like the Lords in a million years. What is amazing is how well it actually works. In terms of making sure laws make sense. And it does enable us sometimes to say to a government, look, just think again about this. But equally, the elected chamber is the Commons, and you can't stop them passing legislation, otherwise that would be undemocratic. And so you can only hold these things up temporarily.
And if you are an appointee, most people are, aren't they, in the Lords?
Yes.
How do you choose your name?
That is very funny. You go to Garter, King of Arms, and so I'm Lord West, and I thought I'd be Lord West. And he said, well, you can't be Lord West, of course, because, there's the other Lord West. And I said, oh, I didn't realise. Yes, 1345. I went, I should have remembered, I said. So then I thought that I'm being a naval chap, and I'd held a huge fleet review down in Spithead, and I'd sailed yachts there, raced to killboats down there, and sailed out of there. I thought that was a rather nice place. It was over water, and Garter didn't like water, as he likes you to have a bit of land, really. And so what I found was that he didn't like Black Rod. It sounds like a Blackadder thing, this doesn't it? He didn't like Black Rod. And so when I went in, I said, well, I've thought of where I'd like to go, but I'm afraid Black Rod said it's just not appropriate. And he said, wait, what do you mean Black Rod said it's not appropriate? Absolutely, what is it? And I said, yes, you've got it. So that's how I got it.
According to Wikipedia, which we know is true, in 2014 you challenged Michael Gove to a boxing match for claiming that left-wing historians are spreading unpatriotic myths about World War I.
Well, he basically said that if you're a left-wing, a socialist, that you were unpatriotic. And having fought in a couple of wars, I didn't really like that. So I said I was willing to discuss it with him inside or outside a boxing ring.
Yeah. Well, just one final question. Just finish. What are you not allowed to do in the House of Lords? This is a multiple choice. A, eat duck while humming. B, blink during prayers. Or C, cease breathing.
Well, we have had people cease breathing in the Lords, sadly. It must be eating in there.
No, it's actually cease breathing. You're not. People may have died in the chamber, but they weren't allowed to. If you die in the House of Lords, you are entitled to a state funeral. If you
you're right, because they take you out. You're dragged out, and they say you're still alive until you get through the door.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you very much indeed,
you.
Lord West.
Thank you.
Now, there's been a lot of rumbling concern about robots lately. Will they take over all our jobs? Will they make us redundant? Well, here to find out is the almost 85% human Jake Yapp.
I thought perhaps we could have a light-hearted chit-chat about how we will become the creators of our own mechanical nemesis, bringing about our own destruction as robots rise up and take over the Earth. Nothing to worry about. But now might be a great time to buy a pitchfork. If I sound like a guy on the edge, it's because I am. All the newspapers have been latching onto this story. Last month, The Express had the semi-hysterical headline,
Robot takeover.
This month, the New York Post.
No job is safe from the rise of the robots.
And even The Guardian. The Guardian, guys!
Robots will eliminate 6% of US jobs by 2021!
That's more than 300 jobs. Robots weren't seen as much more than toys for a long time, apart from when Albertus Magnus built the first android around 1250. And apparently it could answer questions with incredible precision and subtlety, and nobody knew how it worked. Although apparently no one ever saw Albertus drinking a glass of water while it was answering a question. Sounds like a load of bollocks. But it infuriated Albertus' student, Thomas Aquinas, so much so that he got a stick and smashed it to pieces. And that was Android 1.0. Didn't even have Google Translate. Or speech recognition. Incidentally, speech recognition is by far the most fun you can have in the world of broadcasting right now. It is, because you can hijack all the voice-activated devices in Britain. If you just indulge me for a second. Okay. OK, Google, set an alarm for 3:45 tomorrow morning. Hey, Siri, send my entire search history to Mum. Or my favourite, the new Amazon device. Alexa, play Lady in Red by Chris de Burgh. All over the country now. Poor people. Now, obviously, since Thomas Bliming Aquinas smashed up the first Android, it doesn't exist. But I'm pleased to say the British Museum has very kindly loaned us a simulacrum of the homunculus Albertus Magnus built, which I am assured is a faithful replica. I have it here. Now, this might look actually like just a cereal box covered in foil with a paper plate stuck on with a party blower for a mouth. But this is authentic. I tell you what, guys, let's try it. Have you got a question you want to ask it? Just so you know, when it answers, it's 1 for yes, 2 for no.
OK. Are we alone in the universe?
Just so it's 3 for perhaps.
Is there a God?
Can I just ask, at what o'clock in the morning did this seem like a good idea? Jake?
Perhaps o'clock.
I tend to think that in the future, all the boring jobs will be done by robots, and all the cool jobs will be done by humans, like, you know, singer, writer, Allied commander of the Human Resistance Force. The Labour Party lost the Copeland by-election chiefly because the only industry there is nuclear energy, and people knew that Corbyn was anti-nuclear. They thought they'd lose their jobs. What Corbyn could have done, maybe, was to come out and say...
We will make Britain the world leader in renewable technology, and our greatest windmill factory will be right here in Cumbria.
But Corbyn didn't say that because, well, he's not a robot and he doesn't think logically. And finally, what's behind all these stories then? Really, what's it really about? Well, I think it's about the fact that it's a bit harder to blame immigration for all our woes now that, we sort of got Brexit. Now we need someone else to blame for our lousy financial circumstances and the rich. I mean the rich, the magical busload of 85 people who have as much wealth as half of the rest of the planet. Well, they need someone to kind of draw fire a little now that the immigrants thing has played its hand. So if you'll indulge me one last time, Alexa, buy pitchforks.
Now, Lord Heseltine has been re-entering the fray a lot lately. He is set to remain a thorn in the side of the government. Despite being sacked as government advisor, there is that slight problem that once someone's made it to the House of Lords, you can't really shift them very easily. So we're particularly delighted that he's joining us here tonight to sing one of his favourite songs. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Lord Heseltine.
You can't touch me. You can't touch me. I'm 83 and not retired, even though I've just been fired. Unafraid to go the whole hog, I'll take you down, just like that dog, though for legal reasons. It should be clarified, that dog was not by me stranglified. He bit me, thought I was a biscuit, took him to the vet. You can't risk it. You can't touch me. Bye-bye, Kim, you can't touch me. I didn't strangle him, you can't touch me. I'll get the vim. You can't touch. When it comes to squirrels, though, no mercy. Squirrel blood, Tarzan's thirsty, packing heat, pretty nifty. Taken out 350 of the grey ones. Shot them dead, surprisingly. I like the reds. Back to my Netflix and chill, 200 mil. You can't touch. You can't touch me. Stop. Heseltine. Watch out, I can't be ignored. You can't touch me now, I'm a lord. Tell Teresa and her motley crew, I did it for Maggie and I'll do it for you. You can't touch me. Say what? No, you can't. You can't touch me. Heads are in the House of Lords. You can't touch me. Ridiculous.
Thank you very much for listening, and goodbye.
You've been listening to The Now Show, starring Steve Punt, Hugh Dennis, Jack Carroll, Jake Yap, Jess Robinson and Lord West. It was written by the cast with additional material from Andy Walton, John Hunter, Rosie Jones and Jenny LaVille. The producer was Joe Nunnery. It was a BBC Studios production. That was The Now Show from Friday Night Comedy on BBC Radio 4. If you've enjoyed this download, why not visit the Radio 4 website, where you'll find other programmes to download and keep forever, entirely free.